Hello, everybody. Let me
Hello.
let me go back in time. Hi, team. Hi, Charlene. Hi, Kimberly. Hello,
Hi,
Maria.
Maria.
Hello, Maria. Oh dear.
Since it's our last, we're closing this year. Maybe I thought it would be nice to make a connection with our first videos. No.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, Charlene, we're um, closing. We're closing my Passover question today. Wow, it's been a journey.
Yes. Fun. Lots
Yeah.
of learning.
Lots of learning. Yes. Paradigm shifts.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the last part of the review, and after this, we're not coming back to Passover anymore unless people have questions. But last week, what we did is that we did the Old Testament Passover review, and we popped into Luke 2 with Yahushua's age 12 Passover. We just popped into that for a little bit. And this week, we have about 85 slides or so. And we're going to start with the favorite. We're going to start with Yahushua's 12-hour offset. And Tim is going to be teaching that part. And then we'll have just a little short break, and we'll do the review on Paul's ship trip that was done many years later in 57. And we're going to see what happened there. It's just a shortened version, just to review. But there's a couple of things that are happening in that one. As we were looking at if Paul was needing 50 days to get to Jerusalem, or if it was a 99-day Omer count. So there was a couple of things happening in that with a surprise. But we've already kind of set aside the Zadok, Enoch, Dead Sea Scroll calendars because they've already disqualified themselves long ago. So now we're looking at the lunar calendars in comparison with the covenant calendar. And then after that, we're going to go back to a very short review of Noah that we had like last time and just refresh on that. And we're going to be looking at some kind of new material that we haven't done before of how the wave sheaf was connected to Abib 16, the day after the first unleavened bread convocation. That is a really big teaching, and people hold that as truth. We're going to look at how that got married, that wave sheaf festival got married, linked to, connected to Abib 16. We'll do a tiny review on that. We haven't taught on that in its fullness before, but we're going to do a comparison with covenant calendar, looking for something special in lunar calendars and how they have connected to that wave sheaf date. And we're going to look at a lunar calendar with a Friday crucifixion, a lunar calendar with the Wednesday crucifixion. And that wave sheaf date with Abib 16 is connected to a special Omer count. It's number 33. Okay, so we're going to kind of look and see what's happening there. And where does the 27th day of the second month land up with all of these other calendars? Because that's kind of a special date. We're also going to compare it to what Moses did in Egypt when he came out. And we will compare it to Joshua, to his covenant calendar for a Shabbat Passover, and looking for that puzzle piece. And then we will look at Yahushua's calendar date of his ministry and what happens. That's kind of fun. That's kind of some new information. And then we're going to go back to Noah. We're going to look at all those again, just very quickly, make sure we have everything lined up. And then we will look at Yahushua's calendar, and all for one special reason, to compare one date in Noah's flood account. There's 10 dates, but we're only looking at one today. And that's that bonus section that we said that there is a surprise, but we found this week when we were actually working on the PowerPoint, there was two surprises. So that's going to finish up that, and then we'll just kind of tidy it up with the review. We'll be ready to go. Ready to say
Right.
Passover. We know that Passover is not supposed to be on this third cycle Tuesday every single year, like the Dead Sea Scroll calendars say. So we're ready. So I'll start out, and Tim and I are sharing some of these slides at the beginning. So Passover in the scriptures, this is part 2 of the review. And we always have a question, how will the Torah Passover timing, especially between Noah and the Gospels, invalidate all counterfeit festival calendars, including Zadok of the Dead Sea Scrolls? So that is our major question that we've been working on since last year, May. Our review from part one, just here on this one slide, we had a scripture variety. The new part last time was about Noah and the flood in Genesis chapters 7 and 8. And then we popped into, well, first of all, with Noah and the flood, we sort of recognized that there was different Passovers there. And then we popped into Exodus 12 with Moshe coming out of Egypt with a third cycle Tuesday Passover. We also looked at Moses with Exodus 40 when he was raising up the tabernacle, and Passover in that second year of the wilderness was on a sixth cycle of preparation day, a Friday. And Joshua 5, Joshua is always the fun one. His Passover was on a weekly Shabbat. That's an exciting study there. And then we finished off with Luke 2 with Yahusha at age 12, and we found out that that Passover that year was on a third cycle on a Tuesday, just like it was for Moses. So this time we are going to look at the Passion account. We're going to look at the Gospels in year 30 with the 12-hour offset, and then we'll have that short break, and we'll have Paul's ship trip. We'll do a review of that. That's such an exciting study in Acts 20 to 24 in year 57. Then we're going to come back and do that little review of Noah, what we had the last time. And then we're ready for the new bonus of what is happening between Noah in the flood account and Yahusha. We're going to have a chance to look at that with a little more detail. So as we're going through this Passion Passover for our Messiah, we just know that this is always the most exciting part, this 12-hour offset of the crucifixion. And there is the BitChute links that were recorded for you, Maria, and people can go back and do a refresher because there's a lot of slides, 4 presentations, and we're just condensing it today, really condensing it to demonstrate this amazing 12-hour offset between the covenant calendar and the lunar calendar of those unbelieving Jews that was used in 30 CE. Now there's 2 PowerPoints, 2 presentations that we are not reviewing. They're about the wave sheaf, so we're not doing a review on those this time. But anyway, they're there, numbers 14 and 15, if anybody wants to go back and do a review. So Tim, he's going to help us out.
So we're going to be looking at the Gospel Passover of Yahusha, and the year is Common Era 30. The building blocks for covenant calendar are completely found in Torah. The gospel events of Yahusha's ministry provide complete fulfillment. And the covenant calendar basics here listed is number 1. Every cycle begins with the first dawn twilight in the sky. Number 2, the Teshuvah, the turning or the equinox cycle, is the last day of the Old Covenant calendar, the Old Covenant calendar year, when the sun tracks a straight line shadow. Number 3, the next cycle, that's the cycle after the straight line shadow, is the first day of the first month of the new year. Number 4, each month is counted with only 30 cycles per month. Nothing more and nothing less. Number 5, while the civil year today has 365 plus cycles per year, the covenant festival calendar is a perfect 360 cycles per year, in which all of the annual festivals are contained. Number 6, the extra cycles after 360 do not contain any annual festival. They are waiting days till the straight line shadow of Teshuvah resets the new year. This event of the shadow factor fulfills the Hebrew definition of Shoneh, that's 8141. Number 7, Yahusha's life and ministry was contained within the same civil year as we have today. Very significant, especially when we see how he observed the festivals.
And there's a little bit more to remember as well. This study was conducted by comparing covenant calendar to the 4 most popular festival calendars, including 2 that were lunar sunset calendars, and there was 2 calendars of the Zadok Enoch. So let's do a little description of the lunar calendars, and then we'll do a description of the Zadok just as a little summary. In the lunar calendars, both of these cited the sliver moon, but there was 2 different kinds. There was one that cites the sliver moon before the equinox, and obviously that sliver moon is calculated from the conjunction before the equinox to find the first day of their month. And then the other one was the sliver moon is cited after the equinox to find their first day of the month. And the thing that was really important is that we need to take note of, both of them used intercalation of a 13th month about every 3 years. Short description of the Zadok Enoch. Most of them have a 3rd cycle or a Tuesday Passover every single year. Some do an equinox base where they start their year on the 4th cycle after the equinox, after the Teshuvah. And then there's some that use an equilux base. That is starting their year after the March 17th equilux, which is very different than the equinox. And both of these calendars use intercalation of 4 quarterly cycles, a 31st day, at the end of month 3, 6, 9, and 12. And they also have to add an extra week, intercalate an extra week about every 6 to 7 years after the equinox to keep everything in sync. But the question is, where is intercalation found in the scriptures?
That's the question. Where is intercalation in the scriptures? Moving on here, the former 4 calendars were compared with covenant calendar for all the years of 26 to 34 Common Era in search of the second Passover within 24 hours. Scripture has explicitly documented 2 Abib 14 dates within one 24-hour time frame. If you haven't seen that yet, I would suggest you look for it. It's there. Out of every calculation from 26 to 34 of the Common Era, there is only 1 year that could produce the 12-hour offset to align with Daniel 9:27's midst of the week. That year, and only this year, is the 30 of Common Era on the Roman calendar. Very explicit. The Zadok Enoch calendars were completely eliminated, and this is in the former studies, because they are not able to produce, number 1, a midst of the week Passover, and number 2, a 12-hour offset between the 2 Passovers linking to the sunset lunar calendar of the unbelieving Jews, as fully documented in the scriptures. It's a failure on their part. And these are only 2 of their many inconsistencies with Scripture. There are many more. There are some key verses that point to this 12-hour offset. The festival timing is specific to covenant or lunar observance. So I want you to look at this verse here from Matthew 26, verse 5. They said, not at the festival. They were speaking about killing Yahusha. They wanted to take him out, but they vowed, not at the festival, lest there be an uproar among the people. So if Yahusha was not killed at the festival, when did he die? And then we look at Matthew 27, verse 19. And as he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, have none at all to do with this righteous man, for I have suffered much today in a dream because of him. Today, when did her day start? Would it be according to Roman reckoning? And then we look at John 19, verse 13. Therefore, when Pilate heard these words, he brought Yahusha out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. That's at dawn. Then we read the next verse, John 19:14. John announces what day it was, what day of the week, what day of the year. And it was the preparation of the Pesach, and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Yahudim, see your sovereign. Then we look at Mark 1, verse 32. And when evening came, when the sun had set, very distinguishing verse here. He's making absolute certain that we understand when that word evening is. And according to Mark, it's after the sun had set. I'll read it again. And when evening came, when the sun had set, they brought to him all who were sick and those who were demon possessed. Why did we read that verse? Well, it's very important to understand Mark 15, verse 42 correctly. Remember, when evening come about, the sun has set. So let's look at this verse. We're going to be looking at it a little bit, or quite a bit deeper further on, but for right now, let's just read it. And when evening had come, because it was the preparation day, that is, the day before the Shabbat. And we're going to look at John 19, verse 31. Therefore, since it was the preparation day, that the bodies should not remain on the stake on the Shabbat, for that Shabbat was a high one, the Yahudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken, that they be taken away. And then we come to a big one, John 19, verse 42. There, then, because of the preparation day of the Yahudim, they laid Yahusha because the tomb was near. Why is this preparation day of the Yahudim? Who gave the authority for them? We're going to look at that.
Well, those are some key verses. Those are 8 key verses that you want to have marked in your Bible to remember how to do this 12-hour offset. But there are also some key factors that point to the 12-hour offset we want to remember as well. Factor number 1 is that the dawn start of the day for the covenant calendar is important. The events that we're going to look at in the Passion account, they will not lay out properly if a dawn day is not used. That means if you're using sunset for your day start, these events will not lay out. Factor number 2, the sunset start of the day or the lunar calendar. Like I said, these verses expose the counterfeit calendar of the unbelieving Jews. Factor number 3 is Roman reckoning of time. Only John uses the midnight day start for the Passion Week, and he correlates all of this timing perfectly with the dawn day start that is used in the Synoptic Gospels. And this is a major puzzle piece. Factor number 4 is the correlation of the lunar cycles and Abib 14 in comparison to the placement of Abib 14 covenant timing. This timing is so perfect, it is set down by Yahuwah from the foundation of the world. It's absolutely amazing. Factor number 5 that we need to remember is there's 2 groups of Jews that John is talking about. The first group is believing Jews, such as Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, and there are several women that are also followers of Yahusha. And then there's a second group, and they are unbelieving Jews, such as the corrupt high priest who is called Caiaphas, the chief priests and the scribes, the elders, and many of the multitude. Factor number 6, there are 2 groups of women. It's extremely important. You'll need to see the details in the videos for that. Factor number 7 is festival observance. It's going to be either covenant calendar or the sunset lunar. There's going to be 2 different calendars. And factor number 8, from Abib 14 Passover to the 17th, on 2 calendar counts, there are going to be found 2 Passovers, 2 high convocations, 2 Friday preparation days, and 2 weekly Shabbats. So a lot of activity happening. So these are key factors that need to be remembered when you're looking at the 12-hour offset.
How can there be 2 Passovers? Well, it's written in scripture. Let's have a look. Covenant Passover, Abib 14, Common Era 30. There on the 22nd of March, we use the pagan name because that's for identification purposes only, that we have an understanding of the timing. On the 22nd is the equinox, or the shadow of Teshuvah. Note, it's on a fourth cycle. It's March 22, and March 23 will be Abib 1. And on April 5th, Abib 14, Passover at dawn. So you do the 14-day count from the 23rd, and you'll see on covenant calendar, Abib 14, midst of the week, Passover, fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy. This is the year of Common Era 30, and it is a puzzle piece. Very, very important. No other year can fulfill what it does. On Abib 14, on a fourth cycle, right here in Common Era 30, this is the only year from Common Era 26 to 34 that establishes a Teshuvah shadow-based Abib 14 for a fourth cycle crucifixion as per scripture. Only 1 year can do it. Common Era 30. Very, very significant. So we're going to have a demonstration here for the 12-hour offset. I want you to look at this dark triangle. It represents the lunar-based sunset to sunset night season. So obviously it starts at the sunset and goes through the night. In comes this blue triangle, and it represents the lunar-based sunset to sunset light season. Notice that the two are split by the dawn. There we bring in the pink or fuchsia lines, whatever color they are, and those are the sunsets. So here we see sunset to sunset, 24 hours. This is how we're going to be looking at the lunar system or the lunar calendar. That is one 24-hour sunset cycle. Please have a look at that. We're going to be seeing more. Next up, we will overlay man's sunset to sunset format along with creation's established day start design for the covenanted dawn to dawn timing of Abib 14. How do they overlap? How do they fit together? The calculated lunar view after the Teshuvah. This is a calculated lunar system here. So if we look on the chart here, you will see that March 22 is the day of Teshuvah, or the equinox. It's also the day of the conjunction for the moon. Very interesting factor. That means on the calculated calendar of the lunar system, on the 23rd will be the sliver moon, and on the 24th will be new moon's day. The calculated sliver moon places the new moon's day on the March 23, when the sliver is sighted at sunset. This is a day earlier than usual because it's the calculated calendar. Hence, the 30 Common Era new lunar month and year started on March 24. So if you look on the left, you'll see that dark triangle doing a little loop-de-loo there, and then the blue one coming in. This is the lunar system placed over top of the dawn design from Genesis 1. On April 5th, you will see the dark triangle. From new moon's day, there are 14 cycles to the lunar Abib 14th, which starts naturally at sunset. From this blue triangle, we find perfect scriptural alignment for the 12-hour festal offset as written in John 19, verse 42 and Matthew 26, verse 5. And unless you understand dawn to dawn from Genesis 1 and throughout, you will not see this 12-hour offset. It just will not be available to you. This is how important the dawn to dawn is. We'll look at a couple of verses again here, just to remind us. Matthew 26, verse 5. But they, that's the Yahudim, they said, not at the festival, lest there be an uproar among them. They vowed they would not kill Yahusha at their festival of Pesach, Abib 14. So if Yahusha didn't die on Abib 14, Passover, when did he die? Or is there a concept about a different calendar that we have not looked at? John 19, verse 42. There, then, because of the preparation day of the Yahudim, they laid Yahusha because the tomb was near. The preparation day of the Yahudim. We need to take care and notice this wording very, very carefully. How is it that this preparation day is applied to the Yahudim? Why? Could it be a different calendar, a different system of reckoning time? Again, what day was it that Yahusha died? And what day was it that they vowed they would not kill him? On the left of your screen, you will see that pink arrow or the pink line coming in just above the dark triangle. That's the sunset. Their festival started at sunset, their Abib 14, and it's sunset of the fourth cycle in the evening that starts the lunar Abib 14th Pesach. Hence, we see a 12-hour offset, and we see that through the gray triangle. Consequently, in Common Era 30, both calendars share Abib 14 on the midst of the week for 12 hours only. It's a 12-hour offset. Two calendars, 12-hour offset. This calendar section represents the dawn to dawn 24-hour cycle for the midst of the week. The midst of the week Passover on covenant calendar. Yes, minus the pagan name that's supplied here for your weekly cycle timing recognition purposes only. Better referred to as the fourth cycle. So those two pink lines that come in there, that represents the dawn to dawn reckoning. We find that starting out clearly in Genesis 1. You are now going to see the sunset to sunset triangle symbols in this expanded format. After the sunset, that pink line, you'll see that triangle, the darker triangle that came in. This triangle begins the first 12 hours with the twilight and the night portion of the sunset 24-hour cycle. In comes the blue triangle. This triangle represents the following morning and afternoon portion of the 24 hours on the sunset lunar calendar. There's your two lines again, your two pink lines, your sunset to sunsets. So we see the overlap of the sunset cycle over top of the dawn to dawn cycle. 24 hours overlapped by 12 hours. Two different calendars sharing 12 hours. Next, an expanded view of covenant and lunar calendars for the 12-hour offset. This offset calendar date exchange, we're going to look at this. Abib 14, it's the crucifixion on covenant calendar. We read about that, John 19:14. John announced that at dawn. It was the Pesach. And it's the fourth cycle. It's the midst of the week. Fulfillment for Daniel 9 again. Now we're looking at the sunset event, that yellow diagonal line that represents the sunset. The sunset brings in the lunar-based Abib 14, the preparation of the Yahudim, seen in John 19, verse 42. Yahusha was hanging on the tree. He was crucified. He was dead when their lunar Pesach began after the sun had set. He was still hanging on that tree. It was Abib 13 when they crucified him, Abib 13, on the lunar calendar. So when they said they would not kill Yahusha at their feast, they stood true to their word. They did not kill Yahusha on their lunar Abib 14. Yet it was, according to scripture, it was Abib 14 according to dawn, 12-hour offset, 2 calendars. There we see in the blue line, that's the Boker, that's the dawn, that's Epiphosco, where it grows light. And we read about that in Luke 23, verse 54. John 19:31. We're going to look at the believing Yahudim. When we read scripture and we read of the Yahudim, we need to discern, what were they? Were they believing Yahudim or were they unbelieving Yahudim? It's very, very important that we discern between the two because they have very, very distinct and distinguishing entities and belief structures. John 19, verse 31. Therefore, since it was the preparation that the bodies should not remain on the stake on the Shabbat, for that Shabbat was a high one, the Yahudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken, that they may be taken away. The time frame is before the sunset. John records the believing Yahudim declared this light season was that of Abib 14, the covenant preparation of the Pesach that had started at dawn. Yahusha's body was still suspended on the tree before sunset when the legs of the others were broken and the bodies removed, following the Deuteronomy 21, 22, and 23 command that a body cannot linger on the tree all night. Yet, fulfillment of scripture, fulfillment of prophecy, I should say, to be more accurate, Yahusha's legs were not broken since he had already died. Much later, after the sunset, Joseph requested and received the body from Pilate. So how is it that we have been taught that the body of Yahusha was put in the tomb before sunset? Yet scripture delineates the time very, very clearly that it was after the sunset that his body was requested for. So let's examine Mark. Mark defines evening. We read this one more earlier. We're going to look at it again. Please take note of this. When is sunset? Mark 1, verse 32. And when evening came, when the sun had set, they brought to him all who were sick and those who were demon possessed. So Mark is ultra clear. Evening is after the sun had set. Now let's read this verse. Remember, according to the lunar system, the sunset changes the day. Did it? What does Mark say? Verse 42. And when evening had become, because it was what? It was the preparation day. And when? It is the day before the Shabbat. What happened to the sunset, Mark? What happened after the sunset? Mark 15, verse 43, the very next verse. Joseph of Ramathayim, a prominent council member who was himself waiting for the reign of Elohim, came, boldly went into Pilate and asked for the body of Yahusha. Did you notice that Mark says it was after sunset by his wording? It was the preparation day and it was the evening time and it was still before the Shabbat. Before the Shabbat, what happened to the sunset this particular time? Why didn't the day and the date change? So we're going to dissect this a little bit more. Mark's Abib 14, the preparation. The first note here, the when. It was after the sun had set. Verse 42, and when evening had come, I want you to look in that dark square, or sorry, in that dark triangle. When evening had come, note there in the dark triangular, triangle. It's Abib 14 according to covenant calendar. And yes, it's the lunar Abib 14 also. For 12 hours, they share this 12 hours. And when evening had come, now I want you to note the what. What was it? It was the night season classification. What does Mark classify it as? Because it was what? It was the preparation. So how is it that it can be the preparation? Or aren't we taught that the sunset changed the day to the Shabbat of unleavened bread or the convocation of unleavened bread? How is it that Mark tells us that it's now the preparation, or I should say, still the preparation after the sun had set? How does that work? And the third note here, the where. It was the preparation, and they were preparing for what? Mark 15, verse 42 again. That is, the day before the Shabbat. They were preparing for the Shabbat. Obviously, it was in the night season because the Shabbat hadn't started yet, or the convocation of unleavened bread. They were preparing for the convocation or the unleavened bread Shabbat, if you will. What else were they preparing? And after the sunset, it was still before the first convocation out of unleavened bread. And they were preparing the body of Yahusha for burial through that night season. It was the preparation. Is there a better time to prepare a body than on a preparation night? Is there a better time? Do you think this was planned from the beginning, from Genesis 1? Preparation. After the sunset, and still the preparation. No, according to Scripture, the sunset did not change the day or date. Before looking at the expanded view of the two Passover timings, I want you to remember Matthew 26, verse 5. The Pharisees and the scribes were wanting to kill Yahusha, but they said, not at the festival. We added in the IR because when you look at it and you understand it, it's not at their festival, lest there be an uproar among the people. Why their festival? Because their festival didn't start until sunset. What timing did Yahusha keep in his death? So the question is, did the unbelieving Yahudim, were they true to their word? Or did they falsify what they declared? Well, I want to say to you, give them credit. The unbelieving Yahudim were true to their word this time. They held up to exactly what they said. They did not kill Yahusha on their festival. So what festival did Yahusha die on? If he did not die on Abib 14, the Passover, is he still an authentic Passover lamb? Is he still the authentic Passover lamb for our sins that died to make atonement for us? The second Passover within 24 hours, whose was it? How come there's two Passovers in Scripture? If you haven't seen this, I highly suggest you look for it because the timing in here is crucially explicit. It needs to be understood. Covenant Abib 14, preparation of the Pesach. Again, it's dawn to dawn. You see those blue lines, those vertical lines. That's dawn to dawn, fourth cycle, midst of the week. We're going to look at the lunar preparation initiated. In comes that dark triangle. That's their Abib 13 night season. Dawn passes, and it's still Abib 13, according to the lunar calendar, the sunset system. It is Abib 13 light season, and it is not on their festival, their lunar-based festival. That's the time frame when Yahusha was hanging on the tree. It was Abib 13 on the lunar calendar. It was not at their festival. When Yahusha was hanging on the tree, their lunar system people, they looked at him hanging on the tree and just thought it was another individual, just another crime person. It was not the Mashiach in their minds because it was not on their lunar festival. Their lunar Abib 13 had a 12-hour overlap. It overlapped onto covenant calendar, Abib 14. That's part of the deception. It was a covenant calendar, Abib 14, and Yahusha expired. Yet, on the lunar system, it was not on their festival. So what's next? Well, the sunset, of course. You'll see that gold diagonal bar come in there that represents the sunset. In sunset tradition, the lunar 13th date had changed to Abib 14, a different calendar, a different system of reckoning time. The sunset lunar date exchange. Again, this is another concept that we have missed for many years. I'm going to read John 19, verse 42. Note the location of the sunset. There, then, because of the preparation of the Yahudim, are we starting to understand now why it's of the Yahudim? It's a different calendar. It's a different timing, a different system of reckoning time according to sunset. It's a different festival because it's not determined by Yahuwah's outline, his statutes. This is how it's attributed to the Yahudim. So I'm going to read this again. Note the sunset. There, then, because of the preparation of the Yahudim, they laid Yahusha because the tomb was near. Notice, John has been very specific as to who is connected to this preparation day in verse 42. It is not the same Yahudim as in verse 31. Remember, there is believing Yahudim and there is unbelieving Yahudim. Yes, the believing Yahudim are very much a minority. Once the sun had set, the Passover preparation cycle of the unbelieving Yahudim began 12 hours after the dawn, or approximately 12 hours after John announced the preparation of the Pesach in verse 14, chapter 19, verse 14. 12 hours offset, two different Passovers within one 24-hour period, two different Abib 14s within one 24-hour period. When Yahusha said in John 7, he says, I witness against it that its works are wicked. Are we starting to understand what he was speaking against, what he was witnessing against this lunar calendar? It does not use Yahuwah's timing. It is on a different system, a different calendar, a different appointment. Who's in control of these appointments? Luke agrees with Mark 15, verse 42, and John 19, verse 31. Luke 23, verse 50 here. And see, I want you to notice again in that dark triangle, it's Abib 14 covenant calendar, and it's the lunar Abib 14 also for 12 hours. So let's read this verse 50. And see, a man named Joseph, a council member, a good and righteous man, he was not agreeing with their counsel and deed, from Ramathaim, a city of the Yahudim, who himself was also waiting for the reign of Elohim. He, going to Pilate, asked for the body of Yahusha. Verse 53, and taking it down, he wrapped it in linen and laid it in a tomb hewn out of the rock where no one was yet laid. Now, what does he say? And it was the preparation, and the Shabbat was approaching. The Shabbat was approaching. After the burial session, when it took many, many hours to wrap that body, to meticulously clean the body from every ounce or any speck of blood that had been dried into the pores of the skin. After all these hours, when it was wrapped up in the spices, Luke says, and it was the preparation day, and the Shabbat was approaching. What's that word for approaching? We need to look at that. This gives us timing. That word is epiphosko, to grow light. On the night of the preparation day, the convocation Shabbat was still approaching. It was about to grow light. We're going to look here again at Abib 15 covenant calendar and Abib 14 preparation. Remember, two different calendars, 12 hours overlapped. The point of timing here is Boker, it's dawn, and it's epiphosko. This is where the unleavened bread convocation grows light. This is what he's speaking about in Luke 23, verse 54. So we bring in Abib 15, the unleavened bread, fifth cycle of the week. On the 15th of the month is the moed of unleavened bread. We find that in Leviticus 23, verse 6. Yet, overlapping for 12 hours was the lunar Passover preparation morning of the Yahudim. Their feast, their festival, not Yahuwah's. Yahuwah's date, Yahuwah's appointment was Abib 15, unleavened bread Shabbat. Yet the festival of the Yahudim, their appointment, the lunar-based appointment, was Abib 14. Two calendars, two separate calendars, and a different date operating simultaneously at the same time. In conclusion, for the 30 covenant or common era Passover, Yahusha expired at the 9th hour on Abib 14, covenant dawn timing. Yahusha released his breath on the lunar date of Abib 13 at approximately the 21st hour from the sunset of Abib 12. Two entirely different festival calendars, 12 hours offset, side by side, only in Common Era 30. Yet, both calendars functioned simultaneously.
Well, that's amazing to have all of that put into a nugget of that 12-hour offset. So this is just a wrap-up slide of what was happening in that first month with Yahusha. Never forget Matthew 26, 3-5. Then the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people came together at the court of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they plotted to seize Yahusha by trickery and kill him. But they said, not at the festival, lest there be an uproar among the people. Yahusha's festival, his Passover day, was on covenant calendar Abib 14, beginning at dawn. At sunset, the lunar calendar ushered in their Abib 14 for their Passover. The sunset lunar calendar of the unbelieving Yahudim is offset from the covenant calendar by 12 hours from the dawn of the covenant Abib 14 for that full Passover festival. Abib 14 of both calendars share the same 12 hours between sunset to dawn. And that is going to be the end of Yahusha's Passover for the covenant calendar. That's the end of the review. And we just hope that you enjoyed it. Well, now it is time for a short break. We just want to take a short little break here to give you some time to think about that. And just a reminder that there's two other teachings that will not be given today. And those are the birth of John the Baptist and Yahusha, and also the date of the Last Supper. So there's the BitChute links if you want to take a look at those. And we'll be back in just a little bit. So we're back for our Passover of Yahusha's followers. And in this review, we're going to look at Paul's ship trip. This was in 57 of the Common Era. It's recorded in 5 chapters of Acts 20 to 24. There's the BitChute links if you want to see the full presentation. It was in 2 parts. And this, everyone, is an amazing witness. It affirms that Paul and his friends had not deviated from the timing of covenant calendar 27 years after Common Era 30, after Yahusha died. 27 years later. This study was conducted by comparing covenant calendar to the Jewish lunar calendar that uses the sighted sliver moon after the Teshuvah equinox. So we're looking at Paul's third journey. I'll have this map on most of the slides so that you can follow. Anyway, Paul's intent was to observe Pentecost in Jerusalem at the end of his third missionary journey with his 9 traveling companions. So to track his travels from Passover and the days of unleavened bread up to Pentecost, we had to do a very thorough investigation of travel times for walking. How long would it take them to walk a certain distance? What about how many days for sailing? If the weather was nice or if it wasn't, how many days would that be? How much time for riding a horse? And various other weather conditions all had an effect on this timing. Luke's details in Acts 20 to 24 give a very accurate calendar count, and this is a trip of over 1,100 miles or 1,760 kilometers. So we were looking to see if Paul could make this trip from Philippi all the way to Jerusalem in 50 days of the Omer count, or was it an Omer count of 99 days? There's many people that are saying that this trip was way too long. He could have never ever done it in 50 days. It had to be a 99-day Omer count, which we have already shared is not true. Now, the Omer count began at Philippi. That was where they had Passover. That's where they spent their days of unleavened bread. And then they carried on to Troas, right there. And their goal is to get to Jerusalem in time for Pentecost. Wanted to be at Pentecost in Jerusalem. That was Paul's greatest desire. So this is Paul's Jerusalem trip of his first month. This is what it's going to look at. We are going to show you that it was indeed a Passover on the 3rd cycle, a Tuesday, just like Moses had and just like Yahusha had at age 12. They spent their days of unleavened bread there in Philippi, up there at Philippi. And then on this day, right after the weekly Shabbat, that was where it started their Omer count. And then they finished out their days of unleavened bread. Paul tells us that they did not sail to Troas until after the days of unleavened bread, and they arrived on the 5th day, which was Abib 26 in Troas. So it took them 5 days to get there. It was very interesting because in another place, Luke recorded that they had another journey to Troas sometime before. It only took 2 days. This time it took 5. There's lots of calendar clues in these 5 chapters that you need to pay close attention to. Once they got to Troas, they stayed there for 7 days with the believers. They spent some time there. But do watch, because we're going to be watching this Omer count. This is already Omer count number 12 on the 4th day at Troas. This is the 30th day of the month. We're going to go into month number 2. In this second month, we're going to pick up. There's Troas day number 5 and day number 6, and we're already at Omer number 14. Remember, Troas is right over here. We'll bring up the next week. They are at Troas for 7 days. And this is the day that Paul was speaking until way past midnight. And remember, Eutychus fell out of the window. He fell asleep and fell out of the window. They had to take care of him. This was now on Omer the 15th. And the next morning, Paul decides that he's going to walk to Assos. And right there, it's about a 6.5-hour walk. And his other companions, they had left on the ship, okay? But he decided he was going to spend time with the congregation. He pretty much knew that he would never see them again. And then he's going to board a ship at Assos to go down to Mytilene. And I have this little sliver moon here at Mytilene on Omer number 16. Oh yes, this dark Mytilene moon of Omer 16th on the 4th cycle of the 2nd month. Not saying the fourth, it shouldn't be the 4th cycle. This is, yes, it's the 4th cycle of the 2nd month, but it's on a 2nd cycle of the week. At this point, it's right here at this point that we have enough information to know the exact year of this trip to Jerusalem on the Roman calendar. It was the night of a dark moon on Omer 16 of April 25th on the Roman calendar. We've done all of the extra details in the big study. Now, this is kind of a final review of what was happening. In that year, the Teshuvah equinox was on March 22. The very next day on covenant calendar, March the 23rd, was the first day of the first month. When you count out the days, you will end up with a covenant calendar Passover on the 5th of April. That's the 14th day of the first month. But let's take a look here at this dark conjunction. It showed up on the 24th day of the month. Okay, count 2 days and you will have a sliver moon. You'll be able to sight a sliver moon right there on the 26th. When you count forwards 14 days, at sunset, you will have the 8th there as their Passover coming in, and then the 9th is unleavened bread, and on this would be the 16th. This is Abib 16th on the lunar calendar. They have it married to the 16th. Okay, let's also look at this moon down here. This is a dark conjunction. Okay, so you'll have a dark conjunction here. 2 days, you will have a sighted sliver moon on the 24th. Guess what? On the 25th, this is Omer 16 on both the covenant calendar and the lunar calendar, because covenant calendar, what it does, you have your Passover on the 5th, you go to the weekly Shabbat, and that's wave sheaf for covenant calendar. It was also wave sheaf. It was Abib 16 for the lunar calendar. It's very interesting puzzle. So what was the conclusion of looking at all of this? Mytilene did indeed have a dark moon on Omer the 16th. You can go and check these moon phases. Amazingly, the lunar festal calendar arrives at exactly the same conclusion as the covenant calendar for the placement of wave sheaf and the Omer 16 count. Both align with the overnight stay at Mytilene. Is very interesting. Remember what Tim had shown you for Yahushua's crucifixion? Both the calendars were sharing that, that Passover day with the 12-hour offset. Well, here, both calendars are sharing wave sheaf. Very interesting. So it was evident that there was a battle going on between the calendars. We discovered that this wasn't just about the lunar, Pentecost count of going to 50 or 99. There was something going on here with the calendars. So let's look at this second month as we continue on. We're leaving this top row. We got it there in a light gray because we finished with that. But after Mytilene, they arrive at Chios on on Omer 17, pardon me, on Omer 17. And then the very next day, they arrive at Samos, right here, and they tarry at Troilium, which is in that area. That is Omer the 18th. From Troilium, they carry on to Miletus and Miletos, right here. They carry on to Miletos on over the 19th. And something really interesting, we had some really interesting information around Miletos. You'll have to go look at the big study about that. And they arrive at Miletos, and then Paul asks for 2 of his companions to walk up to Ephesus and to give a message to the elders up there that they need to come down and talk to him before he continues on his journey. So is Paul in a rush to get to Jerusalem? And yet he's asking for these elders to come down. The delegates, they do go up and they meet with the friends at Ephesus. This is probably on the Shabbat that they spent with them. We're already at Omer number 21. On the first day of the week, the elders walk down to meet Paul. Take them 2 days to get back down. It's quite a walk there, and they're coming back down with the two companions. It's on the second cycle of the week where Paul meets these Ephesus elders. This is already Omer count number 23. So Paul meets them. He knows that he's not going to see them again. He's pretty sure he will never get back. He didn't go up to Ephesus himself because there was problems there once before. He decided not to rock the boat. But anyway, after he meets with the elders from Ephesus, they get ready and they sail to Kos, right here. They sail to Kos, and this is now Omer 24. The next day, they sail to Rhodes, and then after that, they sail to Patara, right there. They sail to Patara, and then they're ready to find a ship to set sail across the Mediterranean Sea. Excuse me. By the 16th of the month, we are given some details that they are sailing very close to Cyprus. Right here is Cyprus, and it tells us that they had seen Cyprus on the left side of their ship. They continue sailing past Cyprus. This is already Omer count number 29. Excuse me. They arrive at Tyre on the Omer count number 30. They've already made it to the shore here. And on the 30th, they arrive at Tyre. But guess what they're going to do? Paul says they're going to tarry there. They tarried for 7 days. 7 days at Tyre. There must have been a lot of people they wanted to see. And guess what? This Omer count is going on. Omer 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37 on the seventh day of Tyre. So Paul must not have been in a rush anymore to get to Jerusalem. He must have felt that he had time to spend some time there with friends in Tyre. The next day, on Omer 38, they arrive in Ptolemais. You can see that right there. They walk down to there. And then the next day after that, on Omer 39, they were at Caesarea. They tarried at Caesarea for a little bit there on Omer 40, 41, and 42. And now everybody gets ready to leave for Jerusalem because Pentecost is coming on day 50 of the Omer count. They leave on day 1 for Jerusalem. This is Omer 43. Day 2 of Jerusalem, they are still traveling of their trip to Jerusalem on Omer 44. And on the third day, they arrive at Jerusalem on Omer count 45. Something interesting happened on Omer 46. Paul joins other gentlemen to finish out their Nazirite vow, their last week of their Nazirite vow. And on day 1, he is in the temple with them. This is 47 on the Omer count. And this is Paul's day 1 of his vow with these gentlemen. Now there's special cleansing on the 3rd day and the 7th day of this Nazareth vow as you finish out the vow. So on day 2, you can see it's Omer 48 here on the 6th cycle of Friday, and Shabbat is day 49 of the Omer count. And where do we find Paul? On day 4 of this vow, Paul is found in the temple. In the temple. Happens to be the 50th day of the Omer count. On day 5 of Paul's vow, he is in the temple. On day 6, he is in the temple. And on day 7, when he's going to finish his vow, what happens? He is arrested near the end of the vow. Big story in there. The next day, Paul is taken into Roman custody. And on the 6th cycle, Paul is protected by those Romans because these Jews that were not so nice were planning to kill him. But Rome decided that they couldn't have anything happen to Paul because he is a Roman citizen. So they decide on Shabbat at night that they're going to move Paul to Antipatris. Well, you know what? We already know that Paul was in the temple on the Omer 50 count according to what we were doing. And by the way, we didn't hurry anything in this trip to make sure he could get there in 50 days, and we didn't slow anything down to pull it out to 99. We were using reasonable assessments. But there's more because we need to prove that he was there on the 50th day. Remember, Paul is moved at night by Rome. This is where the horses came in. They were moved at night to Antipatris. He arrives in Caesarea. That was where they were headed to, was Caesarea, on the 15th day of this third month. He arrives at Caesarea and he's standing before Felix. And Felix says, well, I need to hear from your accusers. I can't make a judgment on this. So on the 16th, Felix says, no, we got to stop everything. I need to hear from the accusers. So what does Felix do? He sends a messenger back to Jerusalem. Took them 2 days to get here. So he sends a messenger back to Jerusalem with this message. I need to have somebody come here so I can hear the whole story. Ananias receives this message basically on the midst of the week. And then he needs at least 2 days to travel back. Would you not say it took them 2 days to travel? So there's day one of Ananias for traveling. And on the 20th, he arrives there and the case proceeds. Well, on the 20th cycle of this third month, Paul is now going to declare before Felix in his defense that he was ceremonially clean when he was in the temple. Because remember, those accusing Jews said that he was not clean. And this is what he says in Acts 24:18. Really an important verse. I was ceremonially clean when they found me in the temple courts doing this. There was no crowd with me, nor was I involved in any disturbance. Paul is giving his defense. Paul had already declared a time frame in Acts 24:11, a couple of verses before, saying, this is what he said to Felix, because that thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship. Was Paul profaning the temple 12 days ago? He specifically said 12 days. Well, let's see what the count is. Let's put in the count of these days all the way back to number 12. Look what happens. The 12th day happens to be on Omer number 50. And Paul said, there were 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem. It's been 12 days since I did that. Right there we know that Paul was in Jerusalem on the Omer count 50. He didn't need 99 days to get there. 12 days before, Paul had been cleansed with the purification waters in case there was any accidental defilement. He was not profaning the temple like the accusing Jews said that he was. He was worshiping in the temple on day 50 of that Omer count. It is not possible for this testimony by Luke and Paul to justify a 99-day Omer count, but it's not the end yet. There's still some things to think about. Luke and Paul are asking this question. Has this been more than a simple Omer count study that has been recorded in Acts? Will the following counsel from Paul have more meaning now? And this is in Philippians that he wrote a little bit later on. He said, brethren, join in following my example, and note those who so walk, as you have us for a pattern, in Philippians 3:17 and 4:9. Continuing on, he said, these things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the Elohim of peace be with you. What was he talking about? He was saying, follow my example. I was there keeping Pentecost. I was in Philippi keeping Passover and the unleavened bread week and wave sheaf. I came to Pentecost in Jerusalem to keep it. This is my example following Yahusha. So follow me. I'm the pattern. You know what? The feasts and festivals have not been done away with. No way. Paul was saying, let us keep this and remember what these festivals mean. Was Paul also conveying to his audience to follow his example in calendar timing for Yahusha's worship statues, not the worship statues of the unbelieving Yahudim? Do you think he was serious about this? I absolutely think he was. Luke, as a physician, and Paul, as an honor student of the Torah, were the two most qualified apostles to witness and write of this calendar account. They recognized what was happening in the year 57 of the Common Era, and they followed the promptings of the Ruach to make sure that this account was recorded with every necessary detail. If they were not following the specifics of Yahuwah's covenant calendar, there would have been no need to take care and record such a degree of detail and accuracy. However, the calendar events are not recorded in a way that is easy to break open. This is one huge calendar puzzle, following the pattern of the calendar puzzle clues found in the Gospels by all four writers. There must have still been some dissension around the correct calendar to be kept for honoring Yahuwah's festivals. You know, it's very obvious that the lunar calendars of the day had a strong presence, or Luke would not have taken care to record these details for no good reason. Yes, it is true, there is not one idle word in Scripture. The question begs to be asked, who would have ever thought that this simple ship trip would contain so many clues to support, enhance, and declare the covenant calendar as Yahuwah's calendar? Few at most. This study is completely capable of debunking so many huge counterfeits around the calendar in a vast variety of many other calendars, just as the Joshua studies have done. The details in this study are there for each individual to check for themselves. And the question is, how many will take the time to look and see and really do it? Now, there's two more slides that will help to put everything together for this very interesting calendar study. And this is just a short list of some of the counterfeits that are exposed in this study with Paul's ship trip. Number one, Wave Sheaf was married to a floating Abib 16. That is invalid. Wave Sheaf is never connected to a floating Abib 16 date in the covenant calendar. Wave sheaf on the first cycle cannot be outside the Passover week. Do you remember in the Zadok's wave sheaf calendar? It was on the Abib 16 outside of the days of unleavened bread. For Enoch Zadok clarity, Luke would have had to record that their departure was many days after unleavened bread, but their record is very silent about this. This study right here debunks the moon month year start. It's not true. And it also debunks the year start beginning on the Teshuvah day. This study shows you, as well as the 12-hour offset, that the year start is on the day after the Teshuvah shadow is found. Number 5, it proves that the lunar calendar at that time had completely transitioned to using the moon after the equinox, and it was not using the moon before the equinox. And this is approximately 45 years earlier when Yahusha was in the temple at age 12. At that time, they were using the moon before the equinox. Point number 6, we have proof that the year had to be 57 AD, as it is the only year closely associated with the lunar calendar to declare a dark moon on Omer the 16th of the lunar calendar. No other calendar year can break open this puzzle within a reasonable time frame between 58 to 63. There is no other year that works, only 57, just like year 30 for the crucifixion. This study shows covenant calendar is beginning to really crunch the components of other counterfeit calendars. It's a wonderful testimony. So just an epilogue for Acts 20 to 24. With Luke's care to amazing details of this event, it is impossible for Pentecost to be at any 99-day Omer count. And as an honor student of the Torah, Paul does know how to calculate the Omer count according to Moses and according to Yahusha and according to all of the details given in the Torah. This fourth witness, 27 years after the crucifixion, also acknowledges all the spring festivals were still being honored and kept by the believers according to covenant calendar. This witness is exactly the same calendar count as Exodus 12. Luke and Paul ask, are there any further questions? This was another one of those amazing witnesses where it was a Tuesday Passover, just like it was for Moses. Just very interesting that we have a lot of third cycle Passovers that are found within the scriptures. Yes, are there any further questions? There should not be. So let's just do the review slide here for this Acts 20 Passover with Paul. In the first month, the 57 CE Common Era, it definitely did have a Passover on a third cycle, a Tuesday. If it was on another day, it would not have worked out. This count would not have worked out. So that's the end of Acts 20 to 24 for the Passover placement for covenant calendar. It's one of the last witnesses, a beautiful witness. So now we're ready to go into the bonus section of the Torah and the Gospels. This is part 2, and we're going to do a little review from Noah, from part 1 in Genesis 7 to 8, just in case there's some that are watching this for the first time. And we're going to be looking at that second month and the 27th day. We'll also look at the Passion account a little bit there about the second month and the 27th day. That date seems to be coming up. This is a bonus section that we shall find places the Torah covenant calendar under a test using only one clue from Genesis 8, along with the placement of 4 Passovers. We're going to be looking at 4 Passovers. So Genesis 7 and 8 Passovers with Noah. This is new information. We're going to be comparing it to the Gospel Passover with Yahusha. And this is a comment here that I would like you to pay attention to. There are 10 calendar timing markers in the flood account, as you've seen on that chart. We're going to show 3 Passovers in Noah's timing here with this flood account. But here's the question. Would Yahuwah place calendar clues in Noah's flood account with alignment to Yahusha's calendar 2,300 years before the crucifixion? Do you think he would do something like that? And we're going to see if we can find an answer in this bonus section. So let's just do this little review, and then we'll go into the new part for the Noah account. We're going to start at the 12th month of the 599th year, because that is where the Teshuvah is, and we will prove this at the end. We're going to work forward right now and showing you that's where we're starting, but it will be proven as we get going to the end. For the beginning of the count for these timelines in Genesis 7 and 8, both Teshuvah and the Passover were on the first cycle. This is going to be proven, like I said, as we go through, okay, in this bonus section. So let's start out with Noah's 600th year in the first month. This would be the New Year day, the day after the Teshuvah, okay? And the Passover would be right here on the first cycle when you do the 14-day count. There is no record of Noah observing Passover in Abib of the 600th year in this first month. Methuselah, who was the oldest man that had ever lived, he had died at 969 years when the flood was about to arrive. It is our understanding that by caring for his burial, that Noah would have had been declared as unclean and not allowed to partake of this Passover. They also would have allowed themselves 30 days of mourning for Methuselah. He was a great man before the final preparations for entrance into the ark. So we just believe that Noah did not keep this Passover. He would have been unclean. But the wave sheaf count is going to start right here, whether they kept the Passover or not. You go to the weekly Shabbat, and wave sheaf starts right there. So we're going to have our Omer counts on our calendar slides. And we'll also have each day, we're going to count 360 days in Noah's year. We'll also count the weeks. So this is our first week after the Teshuvah, second, third, fourth. So just keep your eyes. We're going to be counting the weeks as well. This is the second month of the 600th year. There's a couple of things that are happening here. On the 10th day of the month, Noah is entering the ark. Okay, this is significant as this is also the same day that the Passover lamb was chosen to be sacrificed on the Passover. In this second month, Noah and his family were chosen to have safety in the ark. Then we come to the 14th day of the second month. This would be an alternate Passover day. If you missed the first Passover, you could have Passover in the second month. And the stipulations in the Torah say that if you are unclean or on a long journey and you missed the first Passover, that you could celebrate Passover in the second month. And that's what we believe actually happened with Noah and his family. Now, the 17th day of the month, this is when the flood waters arrived. Right here. They arrive on the 17th day of the month, and this is where we start our count of 150 days to get to the 17th day of the 7th month. Now, I just want to make a little note here. We're not going to go into any details about it, but this number 17 shows up everywhere. There must be something special about the number 17. So just watch how many times 17 comes up. Anyway, we will do those studies a little bit later. Looking at the third month, what we have is Shavuot there would be on right there on the 10th day of this third month, count number 50, the Omer count number 50. We've been continuing that Omer count just to show you where these Omer counts come in. And then we have that 17th day of the third month that is going to be 30 days of our 150-day count. But there is more. Like I said, we had our 50th Omer count there that came up in our 30 days of our 150. There is nothing written here in the Noah flood account that there was a 31st intercalated day. There's nothing written there at all. But we do have a 40th day of rain right here on the 26th of the month. And the next day on the 27th, no more rain. Very interesting. No more rain right here. Now, it does tell us that there was 15 cubits of water all over the earth above the tallest mountaintops. That's about 22 feet or 7 meters. So there was a lot of water on the earth at that time. Lots of water. Looking at month number 4, there's not much here to record from Noah, except for we're counting these days to 150. This 17th day of the month is 60 days. And what do you think is happening here? Not much. Noah doesn't record anything, but we do know that on that particular day was approximately the time that the golden calf event happened, but there was nothing mentioned in the Omer count about it. There is nothing specific to note in month 4, 5, and 6 at all that we would normally see something about a 99-day Omer count. Nothing mentioned here at all. Month number 5 for the 600th year, there's not too much to record, except for we're looking at that 17th day, and we now have 90 days towards that 150-day count. And we also have in our yearly count 150 days here at the end of month 5. Watching our weeks, 18, 19, 20, 21st week. Going on to month 6, we are still counting our 17th day of the month. We now have 120 days of 150. And we're noting here in the 6th month, there is nothing mentioned at all in this account that there should be a 31st day for an intercalary day like Zadok and Enoch calendars declare. There's nothing mentioned at all. We're still just counting 30 days per month. This is the end of the 6th month, so we have 180 days in our year. We're halfway through the year. Now, the 7th month has lots of things happening on it. We know that in the 7th month is the month of the fall festivals. We have trumpets on the 1st day of the month. Day of Atonement is on the 10th day of the month. And then Sukkot begins on the 15th and it lasts till the 22nd. But there's nothing special mentioned in Noah's flood account about those feast days. But we do know this, that on the 17th day of the 7th month is the day that the ark rested at the final 150-day count. It rested. Doesn't mean the water was gone, but it lodged onto something. It was now resting. It was solid. This day also completes the 150-day count from the 17th day of the 2nd month, according to Genesis 7:24 and 8:3. Therefore, what we would like to show is that months 3 and month 6 do not have a 31st day like the Zadok calendars declare. Have to have a 31st day. There's no such thing in this count. So I want you to note the linkage here to the covenant calendar of John number 7. The 17th day of the 7th month is the 3rd day of the Sukkot, just as Noah also had the 3rd day of Sukkot. This is the same for both Yahusha and for Noah. We haven't done those studies yet. That's in John 7, but that was interesting to find that. Lots of things. We're going to be looking at a lot of different things. Month number 8, there was nothing to note, just waiting in the ark, and I think that they were counting. We're counting our weeks, 31, 32, 33, and 34. Month number 9, there's nothing to note there, except for the ark is continuing to rest, and I'm just sure everybody is counting, and here's our weeks, 35, 36, 37, 38, and we are now up to day 270 in the covenant calendar count. In month number 10, something interesting happens here. We have a record that on the 1st day of the 10th month, it's the 10th Rosh Chodesh, that now the mountaintops are seen. And now we only have 90 days to count to the Teshuvah. I bet they're counting. Noah must have been counting to name all of these dates. And the question is, are these dates significant for linkage to other calendars of the great patriarchs? Do these dates link up to anything that Moses does, Joshua, Paul and his ship trip, anything that Yahusha does? We're just wondering. Now, in the 11th month, there's a whole bunch of things that are happening. What we find here is that it has events of all 1 week apart. And in the 10th day of the 11th month, we have the raven and dove number 1 are sent out on the 40th day since the mountaintops are seen. So if you count here from your 1st day of the 10th month down here to the 10th day of the 11th month, it's 40 days in between there. Very interesting. The next 2 doves are sent out on the 47th and the 54th days since the mountaintops were seen. Dove number 2 and dove number 3. Will these dates link up to something in Yahusha's ministry? That's the question that we're asking. We're just wondering what's going on here. But we're still continuing our account from the 39th week, 40, 41, 42, and in the 11th month, 43, 44, 45, 46, and week 47. And this is now at the end of the 11th month, 330 days of the covenant calendar count. Looking at the 12th month of Noah's 600th year, we are finding out that Noah's civil year had 360 days, and that was all. It wasn't 354 like a lunar count would be, or 355 like some say. It's not 364 like Enoch Zadok calendars, and it was not 365 plus days like we have right now on our civil calendar. His calendar had only 360 days. And the Teshuvah will mark the last day of the 600th year on the 30th day of the 12th month. Right there, that's day number 360. What's going to happen here the next day? It's going to be day number 1. But the question here for day number 360 is, Was Noah able to watch for a straight line shadow, or was Noah simply counting each day of all of the months? Well, let's pop into the first month of Noah's 601st year. What was Noah doing in this verse of Genesis 8:13? This is what it says. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, on the first day of the month, right there, that the waters were dried up from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and he looked. He looked, and indeed the surface of the ground was dry. Amazing, an amazing event on Abib 1 where the waters dried up. Noah removes the covering of the ark. This is the same date as in Exodus 40 that Moses raised up the tabernacle in that second year in the wilderness. Very interesting timing here. That's why I'm saying, are these dates aligning with something that the other patriarchs have done? But you know, Noah has 8 more weeks before leaving the ark. Notice in this 601st year, or Noah's start of the second year in the ark, the Passover, look where it is. It's on the midst of the week. And this is in a civil year of 360 days per year. His Passover is on a midst of the week. And of course, he's going to go to the Shabbat, and he's going to have his wave sheaf right here on the first day after the Shabbat, and that's where he's going to start his Omer count towards Pentecost, because we know that Noah would have kept these festivals. The wave sheaf Omer count on number 1 there, really important for this 601st year. Well, looking at the second month of Noah's 601st year, have a question. Is this 27th day of the second month in Noah's 601st year something of great significance with any covenant calendars? Because this is the day that Noah leaves the ark. It's recorded right there in Genesis 8:14, and it's Omer count number 40. As we followed our Omer count, this would have been 35 the week before, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, right there, and Omer 43. So back to the question, is this 27th day of the second month in Noah's 601st year something of great significance with any covenant calendars for Moses' Passover count? What about Joshua's Passover count? Will it align with Yahusha's 12th year Passover? Or will it align with Yahusha's Passover in his Passion Week in year 30? Or will it perhaps align with something that Paul was doing with his Passover in year 57? We are going to answer this question soon in this bonus section. But just to bring in month number 3 for the Pentecost, for Shavuot there, we can see where the Omer count is number 50 on the 7th day of that third month. But there was nothing of note for the third month of the 601st year given in the Torah to add to Noah's counting, just that we know that Omer 50 would be charted right there on the third month. So for this Genesis 7 and 8 Passover with Noah, we have now examined 10 different dates in Noah's flood account. All of them must have some degree of importance, or this exact documentation would not exist. Moses would not have written it down this way. And do remember, from Noah and all of this generations after, this information was passed down so that Noah could write it. The important part of this exercise for Noah's flood account is to note that the Passover in Noah's 600th year was on a first cycle, a Sunday. But in the second year, his second year, 601st year, the Passover was on a fourth cycle, a midst of the week. I think you noticed that. These Passover dates will be proven through the comparison with Yahusha's Omer 40 count in the Gospels. But first, before we do anything about that, Tim is going to help us to learn something about this Omer 33.
A new note about Lag BaOmer. On the popular Jewish calendar, the 18th day of the second month is the 33rd day of the Omer count, which is always counted from Abib 16. Notice that number 33. Very, very significant. So what is Lag BaOmer? Lag BaOmer is a minor Jewish holiday and a Jewish tradition that commemorates the death of Rashbi. That's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Interesting. Commemorates the death. He lived from 80 to 160 AD, apparently. He was a disciple of Rabbi Akiva, who lived from 50 to 135 AD. He is also the author of the Zohar, the most famous book of the Kabbalah. On the day of Rashbi's death, he revealed the mystical dimension of the Torah, known as the Kabbalah, a form of Jewish mysticism. Interesting connections. More about Rashbi's death on when? Omer count 33. Every anniversary celebrates his hidden Torah, or the anniversary of the revelation of the Kabbalah. This Jewish holiday holds equal importance in their minds to Pentecost and the giving of the Torah to Moshe. What is Lag BaOmer? The word Lag is an acronym for 33, derived from Lamed and Gimel. The phrase Lag BaOmer indicates the 33rd day of the Omer count. This day is always celebrated on the 18th day of the second month on the Jewish calendar. Interesting tradition. On the calendars to follow, they will show how and where Lag BaOmer is married to the Jewish wave sheaf on Abib 16 every year. That would be locking it to Omer count 33. Next, we'll compare the Torah timing of wave sheaf in comparison to Lag BaOmer and Omer count number 40 on the following calendars, and with emphasis on Omer 40 for each example. We're going to look at the lunisolar with a Friday Passover. We're going to look at lunisolar with a Wednesday Passover. We're going to look at Zadok's Tuesday Passover and Moshe's Tuesday Passover, and a look at Joshua's Shabbat Passover. And then we're going to look at Yahusha's fourth cycle Passover. Then we'll examine Noah's calendar count to in Genesis 7 and chapter 8.
Yes, and this is new information, right, Tim?
Yep. And it's interesting. What to watch for on each calendar. We are looking specifically for the 40th day of the Omer count to see if it will place on the 27th day of the second month. And you're going to have a look at this why later. So note those two little caricatures, the 40th day of the Omer and the second month, the 27th day. Notice that carefully. Is there any linkage to Lag BaOmer, the second month, the 18th day? What are we going to find? Will there be some interesting results to observe?
This is new information, and there's a lot of study behind this, other PowerPoints that have lots of details, so we'll just try to follow this. First, we're going to look at the lunar solar calendar that would have a Friday Passover. And remember, the lunar solar calendar marries Abib 16 to wave sheaf. But if you have a Friday Passover and the next day is the unleavened bread convocation on the weekly Shabbat as the 15th, you will have a wave sheaf, or they will have a wave sheaf on the 16th, okay? But what happens? Let's remember that this 33rd day is always on the 18th day of the second month. We're going to look at where this shows up in comparison to the wave sheaf dates and the 40th day of the Omer count. So just try to bear with us here. This would be the 50th day of the Omer count, according to the lunar calendar of the Jews that are believing in the sunset lunar calendar. This would be their wave sheaf, a 50th day from their wave sheaf right here, okay? Then we have the 40th day of the Omer count. It is not on the 27th day of the second month. It's on the 25th day of the second month. This is the lunar solar calendar, okay? When you have a Friday Passover. Of course, there could be a Passover on any day of the week. We're only choosing Friday and Wednesday. But in this particular one, nothing is happening that is special on the 27th day of the second month. When covenant Passover is on the 6th cycle, wave sheaf will also be on the 16th. So if covenant Passover is on the Friday, okay, it will also have a wave sheaf on the 16th, but that's because the 16th comes after the 15th, okay? Now, let's look at the lunisolar calendar. If they happen to have a Wednesday Passover and they still have a Beep 16 on with their wave sheaf. So here's your Wednesday Passover, fourth midst of the week. You have your 3 days and your 3 nights right there. Your unleavened bread convocation, and there's wave sheaf married to the 16th, okay? For a Wednesday Passover and a Shabbat resurrection, here's the question. How can wave sheaf, when you're celebrating it, how can you celebrate the ascension before you celebrate the resurrection? Okay, that's an interesting question. We've done a lot of work on that. But another reason why wave sheaf cannot be married to the 16th. But let's do our count. Our wave sheaf, if you do your 50-day count, where are you going to land up? You will end up down here at Omer number 50 on a 6th cycle. Remember, our day 33 is up here. The 40th day of the Omer count is on the 25th, and there is nothing of significance here on the 27th day of the second month. Nothing at all on the lunar solar calendar. Well, let's take one look at the Zadok calendar. Just to be fair, they say that Passover is every year always on a 3rd cycle on a Tuesday. And remember, they put their Abib 26 as wave sheaf outside of the Passover week. When covenant calendar would have the wave sheaf right here on the 19th, they go outside the unleavened bread week, go to the next Shabbat, and then they have wave sheaf on the 26th. Outside the Passover week. Keep note of that 33rd day of the second month. Just watch where it happens to show up. And for Zadok, their 50-day Omer count will land on the 15th day of the 3rd month. Now, this 15th date of the 3rd month is the Enoch-Zadok option for Pentecost, and they derive this from Exodus 19:1 by miscounting. That's another whole big study. But what about the 40th day of the Omer count? Look what happens to the Zadok calendar. It's actually the 5th day of the 3rd month. It's not even in the 2nd month. The 27th day of the 2nd month is way up here. So Zadok is not aligning to anything. Zadok in their 364-day calendar, or the Dead Sea Scrolls, not one of these calendars can calculate the correct timing for the wave sheaf date according to Torah. And we've already shown that they definitely do not connect anything to the proper Passover timing either. So that's all we're going to do for Zadok. He's been disqualified long ago. Well, let's look at Moses, his calendar coming out of Egypt. This would have been in Exodus 12, and we've already done that work. It happened to be a 3rd cycle, a Tuesday Passover. And as we all know, we go to the Shabbat, the 7676 Shabbat, and the day after is the wave sheaf count according to covenant calendar. We're just taking a note there on the 33rd day of the 2nd month for that Lag BaOmer. And we're looking for the 40th day of the month. It happens to be on the 28th, the 40th of the Omer count. There's nothing here in Moses' covenant calendar to show us that something special was happening on the 27th day of the 2nd month. Now, this 4th day of the 3rd month, right here, is something special. This is the date that aligns with Exodus 19:1. The same day as they left Egypt, right there. Exodus 12, exit from Egypt was on the 15th day. That was the same day. So right there's some clues. And that's where Zadok gets a couple of things mixed up. They're saying the same date was the 15th for their 50th Omer count. But anyway, the 50th day on the covenant calendar would be here on the 8th day of the 3rd month. So covenant calendar has some interesting things. What about Joshua? Joshua was definitely on the covenant calendar. And in Joshua's account, it was a Shabbat Passover that year. In fact, it was definitely a 7676 Shabbat. And the wave sheaf always follows the Passover. And it happened to be a Sabbath that year. So the 15th was wave sheaf day, definitely not a Beep 16. And it was also the first day of the unleavened bread convocation. Well, let's do our count. There's Omer 33. And down here is Omer number 40, Omer count 40 on the 24th day of the month. Day number 27 is way over here. Nothing happening special there on Joshua's covenant calendar. But we're just going to note that the 50th day of the Omer count will be right here on the 4th of the 3rd month. Joshua is counting the covenant calendar. This is the strongest witness in the Old Testament, showing that wave sheaf can be celebrated on a Beep 15. And I think I just took Tim's slide. But anyway, he's going to continue on and help us with this next slide. Very, very important. Tim, if you're there with your mic open.
Yeah, I should have my mic open. Yahusha and the 4th cycle Passover, or Wednesday in pagan terms, but we understand it as a 4th cycle Passover. The wave sheaf is after the H7676, the weekly Shabbat. This calendar year houses the Wednesday Passover, or 4th cycle, midst of the week Passover. It holds the messianic timeline of 3 days and 3 nights. That's another fulfillment. And it shows the first ascension after the resurrection. So let's look at this Lag BaOmer. It's on the 18th. It's on the 30th. It's the 33rd day. Doesn't line up a whole lot there. We come down to the 50th day of the Omer count. It's quite a ways out of line there. And the 27th day, what about this 27th day, the 40th count of the Omer? How does this line up? Well, on Yahusha's year, when he, or after his Passover, that 27th day lines up with the 40th day of the Omer count, and that is the day that he ascended to heaven for the final time before he comes once again. This alignment, the 27th day the 27th day of the second month, was prophesied. It's a prophetic marker when Noah come out of the ark. That date was not just any date that was written in scripture. There's a reason for that date recorded by Noah. It identifies your Mashiach. It pinpoints the exact year that this took place. It's got linear alignment. It directly connects everything all together. It connects the year of the flood, when it started, and our Messiah. It's just absolutely phenomenal once you see this linkage.
Yeah, just continue on, Tim.
Yahusha, this is all brand new again. This is the only calendar example. It's in this Common Era 30 and Covenant calendar that can satisfy all these requirements. There must be a 4th cycle death of our Mashiach. There must be 3 days and 3 nights fulfillment, complete fulfillment. There must be a Shabbat resurrection, and there must be a 1st cycle wave sheaf, and it must house the 40th day of the Omer count on the 27th day of the second month, the day of Yahusha's second ascension. All these points pull everything together to bring linear alignment right from Noah's flood right up to our Mashiach when he left this earth. So why is the placement of this 40th day so important? Well, number one, It's not counted from the lunar Abib 16 wave sheaf. It's not counted from Zadok or Enoch Abib 26. Yahusha's Omer 40 is correctly counted from the cycle following the H7676 Shabbat within the Passover festival week. Cannot be counted outside of that Passover festival week. Again, linear alignment with the words of the scriptures, and most specifically with the statutes we find in Leviticus 23. Let's have a look here at Acts 1, verses 9 to 11, talking about the first ascension. While they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Yahusha, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 6. This is on the second ascension again. He was seen of above 500 brethren at once. This is some of the things that was so special about the 27th day of the second month in Yahusha's year. You need to pay attention to these things. Noah left the ark on this day. This is a prophetic marker. Genesis 8, verses 14 to 16. And in this second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. So why is that date there? Is it just something to fill another verse? And another reason to write more words in the scripture? No. This is a prophetic marker to delineate the year and exactly make absolute certain who our Mashiach is. This is a prophetic marker we need to take note of. Verse 15. And Yahuwah spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark. This prophecy of the ascension on the 40th day of the Omer count is given through Noah. What about the other dates that are there? From Noah and Teshuvah in the first year, let's count forwards once more to see if the count is correct for placement of all appointments and Omer number 40 in the second year on a 360-day year. Will the placements of Noah's Passovers on specific cycles of the week, will they hold any clues for Yahusha's ministry?
Now, just in case that you don't remember what we were doing for the counting before, we're just going to review the count. And just to see if it's right or not, we started in the 12th month, the 599th year with Teshuvah right there. We're going to bring up the first month of the 600th year. There was the New Year Day. There was the first Passover that Noah probably most likely did not celebrate. And there was wave sheep. This is what started the count for the wave sheep up to the Pentecost. So we're looking at all of these, bringing them in. This here in the second month of the 600th year was Noah's Passover, and was celebrated on a third cycle on a Tuesday when Noah is in the ark. This is when he entered the ark right here, had a Passover, and then the flood waters arrived. In this third month, we would have been able to count out the Shavuot, and we were also given details that on the 40th day of rain was right here on the 26th, and the 27th, there was no more rain. 27, watch those 17s, okay? We're continuing to count our weeks. In the fourth month, we were counting out our days to this 150-day count that was given. And we remember that there was nothing written there, nothing special about this last first cycle of the week. It was the 17th week, though. Something's kind of special there. Nothing special there about, I know a date for Noah. In the fifth month, we're just counting through, making sure that we've got everything in order because we want to compare. In the sixth month, again, we're counting out these 150 days and our weeks. The seventh month, we have very special things happening that Noah would have celebrated here. The trumpets and Sukkot and the last great day, that Day of Atonement. Okay, and here on the 17th day of the month, the 7th month, the ark is resting on its final 150th day. But that day does not end until the dawn of the 18th of the 151st day. Don't forget that either, okay? We've done some of that work before. Then we have the 8th month. We're just counting our weeks and the days of our months, the 9th month and the 10th month, when we see that the mountaintops are seen on the first day of the 10th month. Remember, that was linking to something special as well. And the 11th month, where the doves and the raven were sent out. Lots of interesting things. We've already done this, just counting through to see what's happening. In the 12th month, in the 600th year, oh, right there, we have 51 weeks. We have counted out 51 weeks, and now we're just waiting for our 360-day count to end Noah's year, and the first day of the new year will begin the first month of his 601st year. And what happens in this year? Noah's Passover is on the midst of the week. It is a fourth cycle. And of course, that is where the Omer count would be there on the 18th day of that month. And in the second month, very special, the 10th clue is given that Noah leaves the ark on the 27th day of the 601st year. And we're just going to finish out the third month with the Shavuot count and Omer 50. So, did Moses document all of these dates for the flood account for a special reason? Are there important clues to verify Yahuwah's covenant calendar? That's the question that we're asking. What more is there to know about Yahusha's fulfillment of Passover? What more is there to know about Noah's linkage to Omer 40? Is there something special about the 27th day of the second month in their second year? Well, let's count out Yahusha's ministry in 29 and 30 of the Common Era to verify the yearly count and see if there are any surprises. Now, this is a little bit different because Yahusha is living in Rome. He's living on a civil calendar that has 365 days in the civil year, okay? We're going to look at year 29. We haven't done all of the workup. We're going to show you year 29. What was it like for Yahusha in year 29 of the Common Era? And then we will look at year 30, okay? This is going to be a big study. We haven't put in all the details, but Teshuvah was on the 22nd day of March in that year of 29. So the first day of the month would have been on the midst of the week. Look what happens. Passover here in the 29th year would have been on a third cycle on a Tuesday. The Omer count is going to be right there. I'll have the Omer counts in, and I will have the days counted on each month. I've also placed here the weeks. We're counting the weeks up to 51, 52, and I have put in here some Roman dates just so that if you want to go and check, okay? It's kind of tricky to do this. So Yahusha's Passover in 29 of the Common Era was on a third cycle. We're just counting out the second month, where you'll have the first day on a sixth cycle, just to make sure everything's right. Counting our Omer 14, 21, 28, Omer 35, okay? We'll have Omer 42 in the next month. Just counting out our weeks, 5, 6, 7, 8, just kind of checking, make sure everything's okay. In the third month, yes, indeed, we have our Omer count 49 following here, because this would have been Omer 42 up here, was no room to put it in, and our Omer number 50 here on the 8th day of the third month. You can check out all these weeks. We're counting them out from week number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, counting the days, giving you a couple of dates here on the Roman calendar, what it would have been. Okay. In the fourth month, we're still doing the same, going ahead, counting out all of our weeks, starting with week 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and now we're up to the 120th day of the year. at the end of month 4. Month 5, doing the same thing, counting our weeks, 18, 19, 20, and 21. And now we have completed 150 days in our count for the full year, the festival year. Month number 6, we're still counting week 22, 23, 24, and 25. Okay, just giving you some dates here of what it would be on the covenant, on the civil calendar. And the 6th month finishes here with 180 days. 7th month always has some interesting things happening on it. Of course, that first day of the 7th month is trumpets. And then you have Day of Atonement on the 10th day. Sukkot is right here on the 15th, and the 22nd would be the last great day. That's month number 7. In month number 8, we're still counting our weeks, following our weeks here back to 7, week 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and then in month 8, week 31, 32, 33, 34. Pretty straightforward. We're now up to 240 days in our festival year. This is around November the 16th, 17th. Let's keep counting. Month number 9, our weeks there, 35 to 48. And at the end of the 9th month, about 270 days, we're around the middle of December. Going into the 10th month, we're still counting our weeks, 39, 40, 41, and 42. And now we've completed 300 days of 360-year festival calendar count. Month 11 might seem kind of boring, but this is very necessary. We have to do this. We've up to 330 days. We're still counting our weeks. 43, 4, 45, 46, and 47. We're around the middle of February now. And now the 12th month. We'll have our first day right there on a 5th cycle, a Thursday. And when you count out, you will have 360 days right here. And we have 51 weeks. We're around the middle. Now, what happens next? This is the first year of Yahusha's ministry. We have to count out these days, these waiting days. This was the 360th day, and we need to now wait out these days because he's on a 365 civil calendar, okay? And when you wait out these days, there's 4 waiting days, and then Teshuvah is on the 22nd day of March, okay? The 322, that's March 22. That's Teshuvah, according to the information that you can find for Common Era 30. And we've already done this work with the 12-hour offset. You would have your first day of the month here on a Thursday, a 5th cycle, and it gives you a Passover. This would have been the crucifixion date here on the midst of the week. Remember, the lamb is chosen there, and we have our Passover. So what does Yahusha have? A Passover? His Passover. It was his time on the 4th cycle. That is a second rotation of that yearly cycle. Very interesting. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, we find out that that was the day that Yahusha rose, ascended to heaven the 2nd time. Just counting out in month 3, Omer number 50 would have been right there just to finish our count to Omer 50. And now we're going to bring back Noah. Noah in his 2nd month in the 601st year. We also have recorded from Moses that on the 27th day of the 2nd month, that is when Noah left the ark. Yahusha and Noah both celebrate Omer number 40 on the 27th day of the 2nd month in their 2nd year. Really interesting. This is another Kodesh formatted fulfillment of Shanae. You know what? Lunar reckoning cannot repeat in this same manner. It absolutely cannot do it. This eliminates all lunar calendars. This study eliminates all Zadok calendars, eliminates any calendar that is not counting according to covenant calendar. And now an interesting comparison between 2 unique covenant calendars of Torah and the Gospels. We're going to compare Noah in the ark with Yahusha on the earth. I bet you already know that in Noah's first year, his 2nd month, Passover was on a third cycle. Yahusha, in his first year in 29 of the Common Era, his Passover was on the third cycle. In Noah's second year, his first month Passover was on a fourth cycle. And you already know, in Common Era 30, Yahusha's second year, his Passover was on the fourth cycle. That is bonus number 1. And bonus number 2, both Noah and Yahusha shared significant events on Omer count 40 on the 27th day of the second month in the second year. Bonus, both of them. First year, Passovers were on a third cycle. In the second year, Passovers on the fourth cycle. And then this ascension and leaving the ark and leaving the earth. 2 bonuses there. Covenant calendar comparisons. Yes, we have examined only one calendar count out of Noah's 10 different dates for his flood account. Only the calendar dating during Yahusha's ministry aligns uniquely with Noah's count for the 27th day of the second month in the second year. No other calendar accomplished this, including Moses, Joshua, and those false calendars that we looked at. Another important part of this exercise for Noah's flood account is to note that the Passover celebrated by Noah in his 600th year was on a Tuesday, and in the 601st, he observed Passover on a Wednesday, the midst of the week, and it aligns in a very unique way with Yahusha's experience, while his civil year was 365 days in a year. It wasn't the same as Noah's. Noah had only 360 days in a civil year, just like he had 360 days on the covenant calendar. Should we be paying attention to these dates? There's something interesting happening here. Seems like there are some clues, some calendar clues. This search for covenant calendar has been really interesting, and we've just begun to break it open. But the question is, have covenant calendar clues been hidden between Noah and Yahusha's ministry that will unlock some interesting and unique understandings? Well, we shall see. So that's the end of the Noah bonus section for placement of the 4 Passovers and the Omer number 40 of covenant calendars between Noah and Yahusha. Tim's going to help us with a couple slides now. With his mic open.
Yes. Is it possible for other festival calendars to align with Noah and the Gospels as we have seen here today? Is there any Zadok possibility? I'm just amazed at how Noah operating on a 360-day calendar gives total alignment, and when he prophetically marked out Yahusha's ascension on a 365 plus day calendar. How does that work? Would that have been planned by our creator? I think so. What about these calendars? Is there any Zadok possibility? No. The investigation is completely accomplished. It's been done. The numbers have been laid out. The numbers have been charted. And the failure of other festival calendars finding Torah alignment is glaringly stark. Glaringly stark when you look at it. So what is next? What else is there? Well, that's a good question. Careful what you ask Yahuwah. What's next? He'll give you something on your plate, that I assure you. A full examination of Yahusha's ministry in the Gospels with alignment of all dates according to covenant calendar and Noah. That's what's on the agenda coming up. It's going to take some time, and it's sure to open up our eyes. There will be some things there that we have not seen.
Yes, we're waiting for that. King Solomon in Ecclesiastes 12:23, he said this, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear Yahuwah and guard his commands, even his festivals, for this is the whole duty of man." What is the conclusion of the matter? What is the conclusion? From the Torah, let me go back. Let's start this over. What is the conclusion of the matter? From the Torah and the Gospels, the Torah has the key and the Gospels has his sandals. That is the conclusion of the matter. I love Proverbs 25:2. It is the glory of Yahuwah to conceal a thing, but it is the honor of kings to search out a matter. And that's what searching out covenant calendar has been all about. It's like searching for these clues. What is it? How do you break open the puzzle? How do you do it? What is it? You know what? We have been given 3 assurances from Yahusha. These are his words. Matthew 10:26, there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. And then he says in Mark 4:22, almost the same thing. There is nothing hid which shall not be manifested, neither was anything kept secret. And again in Luke 8:17, just to make sure we get the message. For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known. Yahuwah's covenant calendar of his appointed times will be known. And then Ecclesiastes 12:14, Yahuwah shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. He has put clues all over the scriptures. He's saying to seek it out. There's not going to be secrets. You're going to find it. You're going to find it. Well, his sandals do speak. This is the end of this series for this Passover search. We just want to thank you for being with us throughout all of this series. Send your questions to questions@studythecalendar.com if you have any. And we just want to say to you, Shalom. And that's the end.
Wow. So, do you have a presentation with more connections and alignments between Noah's flood account and Yahusha's ministry?
Well, we were sort of planning to pass that to you to do the homework.
Ah, thank you.
No,
You don't have it.
not
We
yet.
are
Okay.
working on it, but it'll take time.
Yeah, of course. Okay. All right. It's just because you said it's coming next, and I wanted to ask, is it ready? Is it really coming next?
No, coming is the key word there.
Coming at some point in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot of
Like,
work. There's a lot
yeah,
of
of
work.
course.
And the thing is that we've been so busy. We've been so busy doing Zooms with so many around the world and sharing what we have found. Basically, what has been found already locks it. A covenant calendar is locked, sure and simple. But when we do the full ministry and the full gospels and get to start from the very beginning and go through to the very end, that will be the end. But we're not there.
The end. I like that. I don't
That will
think
be
it'll
the
be
end
the
of
end.
calendar confusion and the end of calendar discussions. Which one is the true calendar, right, Kimberly? There will be no more discussion.
Okay. All right then. Okay, as I said, I will ask, we will have a Q&A session next time we meet.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna prepare my questions better with verses and everything instead of me trying to look up, telling you all the time, I don't know where I read it. I don't remember the verse. I will have that everything. So it's easier. All right. Okay. So I won't ask anything now. So do you have any comments or something to add before we end the
Well, I always
presentation?
do.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, Maria, to you and your husband, Matthew, for doing the work of the calculations between Moses' Exodus Passover account to Joshua. That was just an amazing key that opened up so much understanding, not only for us, but for many others that are the claim out there right now with every other counterfeit calendar is that theirs is the right calendar. But that piece of information is just a golden gem.
Mm.
And it stops everyone in their tracks because they cannot do this. With their calendars, it cannot show that Moses had that Tuesday Passover, and 42 years later, Joshua had a Shabbat. And when you showed me, which I haven't gone and looked, on the Excel, that going backwards 400 years to Genesis 15 for Abraham, and that covenant in Genesis 15, that was also a Shabbat Passover. It's just like, with that piece of information now, there's so much more that could be opened up in the covenant calendar studies going all over the Old Testament if one had time. We want to thank you for that work, as we didn't have it.
Saying that's a gold brick is an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a wonderful contribution, and you were chosen to do that.
It was a pleasure. I asked Matt to help me do this because, basically for my own satisfaction. So I wouldn't have any doubt. It was the first time I was hearing this about Joshua's account. And, I told myself, I said to myself, well, if you're correct, and it was a Sabbath, then counting the years, it should line up. If you're also correct and it's the year was 360, it has to work. Otherwise, you're not correct. And here, behold, it worked.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was one interesting day.
Yes.
The accuracy of covenant calendar is just absolutely phenomenal. And we shouldn't be surprised, because it's what's written in Torah, and it's what was designed from Yahuwah. So we shouldn't be surprised at all.
No, of course not.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too that we were challenged to look at Paul's ship trip, and there's so many that are saying that Omer count is 99 and 99 days instead of 50. But that was a gem too, to go and look and see. It was a battle of calendars that year. The lunar calendar was still strong, and that study just shows that they were still keeping covenant calendar 27 years after Yahusha died. They were still hanging on to it. It got lost, after Jerusalem was destroyed and people were dispersed. But don't forget those verses at the end. There's nothing hidden that will not be revealed. It has to be revealed before the end of time. If indeed we want to be following on his worship statutes, we have to know how to count them out. And he said, I'm going to meet with you on those days because those are the days I commanded. I want you to come up and meet with me. So let's not be on a wrong day. Right now, at this time of the year, the lunar calendar is doing their Passover festival this week. 3 weeks after covenant calendar, but it's okay.
The Greek Orthodox Church also.
Yeah.
The Passion Week starts this Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've had people, just a couple of weeks ago that they heard, a few things that we were sharing that we've already shared with you. It was about I think the 12-hour offset. And the gentleman, he was cluing in that there was something going on with this calendar. And he said, well, I'd like to celebrate Passover on covenant calendar. But we were already past Passover by about 10 days. We said, well, it's already passed. He didn't realize. He probably thought that covenant calendar Passover was close to the lunar Passover, because we've been doing some other kinds of work. They're just a new group. So, and just kind of sounded like he was disappointed he missed it. But anyway, yeah. So people are learning. They will learn, and they will share it. It will go out, and those that are seeking, they will find it.
Yeah. Great.
So we
Kimberly, we haven't heard your voice today.
I know. It's my day off.
I'm resting.
I'm resting from the teaching this time.
She gets to answer all the questions next time we meet.
Be prepared, yes.
Yeah, I do know that there's a lot of people waiting for this review, a lot of people waiting to see it. So I hope that it encourages them if they've got any areas where they don't understand, they can go back and look at the video.
Okay, so you've had people saying, we're looking forward for this review.
Yeah.
Okay, then we should definitely tell them, either on your channel when you upload it on YouTube, or either on my channel or on BitChute when I upload it. They should write also their questions. It's a Q&A next time. I will have my questions that I, this last year, I've been reading stuff, I've been watching other people, I've had debates with people, I have accumulated questions. People can write on the comments questions if they also have them. We can address them. There you. That's a
Very
good
good.
idea.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah.
No, it's very good. I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
And you know what?
So,
they can also tell us that if they want to meet with us, together on a Zoom with you, just meet with us and just have fun together. We could arrange that too, if that's something that you want to do. We can always
yes,
come and
that would be great. If people are willing to do that, yes, that would be great.
Yeah.
But just for next time, where I will be addressing my questions.
yes, next time it's just
Because
us.
it's my privilege. I have you on a Zoom. If other people have questions, we can also address them for this review. It's a good opportunity. So, okay. If nothing else, we can end the recording.